Hello dear chess enthusiasts and welcome back to our exciting journey through the world of chess. In this video we are going to take a look at the very beautiful game played between two strong Ukrainian grandmasters. The game took place during the European Club Championship, basically the Champions League or European Champions League of chess. And the game was played between Shevchenko, and Shevchenko had white, against Fedorchuk, who had black. Shevchenko is very young, rated incredible high, almost 2700. Fedorchuk peaked at 2670, so also a very strong player. And black decided to play the Nimzo-Indian in this game. And by the way, do you know what the Nimzo-Indian is? If yes, have you ever played it or faced it? Let me know in the comment section. So without further ado, let's plunge straight into the heart of the action. White plays first d4, black plays knight f6, c4, e6. And now there are a lot of moves for white. For example, knight f3 or g3, among others. And there's also knight c3. But there are some players which are not fine with this pin after bishop b4. And therefore they play knight f3 or g3 and avoid this pin, this annoying pin maybe. And the idea of black is very clear. He wants to control the e4 square. And white here has a lot of moves. He could play knight f3. He could also play e3, the Rubinstein variation. Also a very early a3 or bishop g5 and other moves. And as I've mentioned, usually black will not allow white to play e4 without having a damaged structure. So therefore it's very unlikely that white will get a pawn on e4 unless you choose the variation which Shevchenko played, pawn to f3. Now playing e4 is almost impossible to prevent. And what f3 is doing is it's controlling e4, allowing a push, controlling the center. These points are the advantages. What are the disadvantages? As you can see, this pawn on f3 is blocking the natural square of the knight. So this knight might have some issues to be developed. And if this knight is developed, what about this bishop? Might also have some issues. But let's see what happens. Here black has quite a few choices. The most popular are d5, which is less dynamic but still not harmless. And there's the ultra sharp c5. And this is the choice of Fedorchuk. And it's very important, as I've mentioned in the beginning, that Fedorchuk, according to the database, is facing this opening, this f3 variation, only the third time. So here you can see that this variation is good, but it's rarely played. So, and there is a gap of 7 years, because Fedorchuk had this position with f3, with the 4 of f3 against Tal Baron in 2015 and 2016. And now it's 2023, so 7 years of no repetition. Maybe he has looked at it at home, but it's very difficult to play such positions or variations, especially if they are fine like this f3 variation. But let's continue with the game. So we have a Benoni structure and white goes for d5. The difference is, of course, that this bishop is on b4 and no g6 is played. So black castles, and as mentioned, white is playing e4. And we have talked about this. f3 strengthens e4, and now e4 can be played. And black plays d6. There are alternatives, for example, the very rare rook e8, which isn't bad at all. Or immediate b5. But yeah, let's just continue with the game. d6. And now white decides to play knight g to e2. And this is exactly my point, which I've mentioned earlier. Either you develop this bishop or this knight to e2 at least. So only one piece can go to e2. And the idea of white is put the knight on e2 and the next move somewhere else. So the bishop can go to e2 or d3. And this is the logic behind it. And as you can see, this diagonal is blocked for a few moments. White has not castled yet. Oh, oops, sorry. So development is not finished. Black has castled. Black has developed two pieces. So now black plays a6. There are also alternatives. And the idea is to play b5. And white could play a4 here. And this has been played in the game Wesley So against Levon Aronian in 2015. And white suffered a heavy loss. And it could be read everywhere, and this game became very famous. And this game was the reason why f3 wasn't that popular afterwards, but recently its popularity increased. So in the game, b4 was prevented for the moment. Aronian played the novelty bishop to a5, then followed bishop to d2, which was probably not that good, because now Aronian took on d5, c takes d5, and he starts to play on the king's side with knight to h5, allowing the queen to jump to h4 eventually. So g3 was played, knight d7, bishop g2, b5. So white played a4 to avoid this b5 push, but still black managed to do it. So white played g4 and black played b4. White doesn't want to spoil his kingside structure, so plays knight to b1 because the alternative of taking here and here wasn't too attractive. The king doesn't feel very safe with these pawns here. So knight b1 was played, and now a queen h4 check, king f1, and now came the idea of Aronian, knight to e5. And the idea is that after pawn takes h5, there is this f5 move with this idea. So black is down a piece, but black has castled, black has developed almost all minor pieces. He's one down, so he has developed two. The bishop is still not developed, but the bishop is also contributing to a few things here. And Aronian won a very beautiful game. Actually, Wesley So didn't take immediately. He played bishop e1, queen f6, and now he took, and Aronian took on f3. And this is winning, and it's very complex, but we are just going to go back to the game because this would be too much. So in this position, white usually goes either knight to g3 or Shirov's idea knight to f4. In this game, we had knight g3, and black played b5. And still, there is this pin, so it is possible. Why not? And white decided to go for a very rare line. Usually the white players play something like bishop to e3, then follows rook e8, bishop e2, b takes c2, bishop takes c2, and now it's the time to take on d5, bishop takes d5, knight takes d5, and now after queen takes d5, black has only one move, and it's rook to a7. And the rook can be also brought into the game, maybe the e-file, yeah, depends. So let's go back. So this was the bishop e3 variation, but instead, in this game, Shevchenko decided to play a very rare line, bishop to f4. And now black really needs to know what he's doing, because what he should do is exchange once on d5. So pawn takes d5, pawn takes d5. And now play c4. So he opens up this diagonal. And after a4, which is trying to put pressure on the rook. And as we have seen, maybe black wants to play f5. So the bishop wouldn't be that strong on this b7 square. And also there's this massive pawn structure completely protected. Very unlikely that the bishop on b7 would be useful here. So therefore, black needs to find another way of protecting the rook or defending it. And in this case, it's just putting the bishop from b4 to a5, interrupting this. So now if he took, the rook is not attacked at all. Otherwise, it would be attacked without the bishop on a5. Then the a pawn would be pinned. Wouldn't be so nice, would it? So bishop to e2, queen to b6. Now castling is not possible for the moment. And the most logical looking move here is queen to d2. But this doesn't work well because of knight to d7, bishop e3. And now the very strong knight to c5. And now white cannot castle. Why? If he castles this way, then obviously check. And the position is not nice at all. Goes back, and now you can decide what to do. And if he castles king side, it's even worse because there's this move knight b3, bishop takes b6, and knight takes d2 is not check. Yeah, it's not check, so it's not working because the king is here. So, but instead, bishop takes b6 check, and the queen cannot enter any square. So white is just losing a piece. So let's say rook f2 or king h1. It's all the same. Knight takes d2 and white is down a piece. Not very pleasant. And completely losing, but that's pretty obvious. So as I've mentioned, black should be playing very precisely. Otherwise, he will not make it to prevent castling. And in the game, black played rook e8, and this is not a great move at all, because now he's one tempo down, and now all these ideas are not working, and we will see why. Shevchenko plays brilliantly here. So bishop e2, e takes d5, c takes d5, c4, a4, all the same moves. And now, after bishop to a5, probably castling, and there are no issues for white. The king will be safe on h1, and white can make progress. So bishop b7 instead. And now Shevchenko played the very interesting move knight to f5. And for black, there's only one way of dealing with this situation, at least I believe so, and this is playing the very unpleasant g6, and knight h6 check, king g7, and now the king is not very happy, but black is still in the game, white has advantage. But instead, queen to b6 was played. So we have seen this idea in our previous variation. But in this case, this knight is protecting e3. So bishop to e3. This knight on f5 is super strong, so therefore g6. And getting rid of this knight, at least from f5. So h6 might be not worse. And black played bishop to c5, and bishop takes c5. And now black has no choice. Taking with the queen is not possible because of queen to d4. After the queens are exchanged, this structure is very bad. This pawn of black must move. It cannot be defended a second time. and actually it's attacked 3 times, so it must go to b4, and then comes knight to d1. And I know this doesn't look like completely losing, but these pawns are going to fall. There is no way to protect them. Let's say g6, then just this simple rook c1, still no way to protect them enough. So let's say, yeah, like this, and black run out of defenders for the c pawn. So therefore taking with the queen is just losing, and black decided to take with the d pawn. So d takes c5, but then followed queen to d2, knight b d7, white castled, g6, and now an intermediate move, a5. Why a5? If you look at this knight, it's not only covering e3, which we have already discussed, but it's also eyeing this very nice d6 square. And in the moment it cannot go there because of the queen. So after g6, trying to get rid of this knight, a5 is played, and the queen goes to a7. And the ideas are very similar. We will see how white converts this to a win. So knight to d6, rook e7, rook a b1, queen b8, and now knight takes b7, queen takes b7, and now is the moment d6. Pushing this pawn is the idea. And it's working because white has set up everything for it. What he's going to do is he will push all these pawns. So in the end, the pawns are going to be massive in the center and on the king side. So rook e2, e8 was played. If rook e6 was played, then simply f4, and after knight takes e4, knight takes e4, queen takes e4, there's bishop f3, and this is not working because of queen d4 exchange, and now the rook is hanging. So black would beat down a rook, not very pleasant. So rook e8 was played, g4, rook e6, and now f4, preparing this move. Still b4 was played, but this is nothing serious for white because there's also a rook on b1 and the queen on b7, so this is not so pleasant. So therefore white plays e5, attacking this knight, and this is working because after b takes c3, b takes c3, there is this attack and the knight is still hanging, and therefore black just resigned in this position. But let's take a look at some variations. So b takes c3, let's say if queen c6, then bishop f3, again the same idea, winning the exchange in this position and then winning back to peace like this, for example. And this is not pleasant at all. No, maybe like this, and yeah, it's completely winning for white. Up material, passed pawn on the 7th rank. So this is no option. So therefore queen c8 immediately. And now white just takes on f6. Knight takes f6 and f5. And this is again completely losing. And black can do basically nothing. Like, he can't even exchange here because then rook moves, check, and the king is stuck. Yeah, so and black is completely lost. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video and liked the game which I presented you. Let me know what you think about this game. When analyzing this game, I had a very tough time to figure out the slight differences in these variations. What do you think about this? Is the f3 variation a good way to beat black? See you in the next video. Bye.